Dust exploded into a choking gray cloud, clogging the air in the attic of the old Monroe house on Elm Street, Havenwood, Ohio. The sledgehammer's thunderous crash echoed like a frantic heartbeat, shattering the deathly silence of a place abandoned for 32 years. Eddie Russo, a 30-year-old demolition worker, with a voice like he'd smoked a pack of Marlboros before breakfast, swung his crowbar, slamming it into a pristine drywall panel amid rotting beams and cobwebs. This wall didn't belong, it was too new, too clean for the suffocating, mold-stinking space. "What the hell is this?" Eddie muttered, wiping sweat from his brow with a dust-caked hand. The flashlight strapped to his hard hat swept across the attic, catching tattered cardboard boxes, a broken-necked doll sprawled in a corner, and a rusted kid's bicycle leaning against a cracked beam. But what froze him, what made his chest tighten like a vice, was the hulking white metal beast looming behind the collapsed wall. A 7-foot-tall industrial freezer, the kind you'd find in a slaughterhouse or a greasy diner, not in the cursed attic of a house nobody dared touch. "Mac, get up here now," Eddie shouted, his voice cracking with an unease he couldn't name. His flashlight trembled, locking onto the freezer's heavy steel padlock, not locked from the outside. Locked from the inside. Someone, or something, had bolted it from within. Mac Thompson, the 50-year-old foreman with a face carved from granite, stomped up the creaking wooden stairs, his work boots pounding the dust-covered floorboards. Behind him trailed Sarah, the new girl on the crew, her ponytail swinging, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and dread. Mac stopped short in front of the freezer, his gaze scanning the cold metal surface, then fixing on the lock. He sucked in a sharp breath, the stench of dust and decay filling his lungs. "Jesus, Eddie," Mac whispered, his voice low, almost reverent, like he was standing in a graveyard. "Who puts a thing like this up here? And locked from the inside? That's not right." Sarah edged closer, hugging her arms as if to ward off a chill that had nothing to do with the muggy June air. "Those carvings, look at 'em," she said, pointing to strange rune, like symbols etched into the freezer's surface, sharp and twisting, like an ancient language none of them could read. It's like something straight out of a horror flick, isn't it?" Eddie let out a dry laugh, but it died fast when he touched the padlock. It was ice cold, like it was sucking the warmth straight out of his skin. "Horror flick, my ass. We gotta open this thing. Could be something inside." Mac shook his head, his eyes narrowing to slits. "Don't touch it, Russo. This ain't right. I feel it in my damn bones this thing's bad news." He turned to Sarah, his voice sharp. "Call the cops, now." Sarah nodded, stumbling back, nearly tripping over an old cardboard box. She fumbled for her smartphone, her hand shaking as she dialed 911. Eddie, too stubborn to wait, crouched to inspect the freezer closer. That's when he heard a faint whisper, soft as a breeze but unmistakably human, murmuring from inside the freezer. Not one voice. Minnie, blending into a ghostly chorus, like a prayer from the beyond. "You guys hear that?" Eddie asked, his voice pitching high, teetering on the edge of panic. He pressed his ear to the metal door, heart pounding like a jackhammer in his chest. Mac frowned, his weathered face creasing deeper. "Hear what?" "Don't give me the creeps, Russo." But he leaned in, listening hard. Nothing. Just the wind whistling through cracks in the sagging roof. Sarah, still clutching her phone, whispered, "Cops are on their way. They said, this is the Monroe house, right? The family that vanished?" Eddie jolted upright, as if the name Monroe had slapped him across the face. "Wait, you mean the family that disappeared back in the day? This is their place?" Mac nodded, his eyes darkening like storm clouds. "Seribu Sembilan Ratus Sembilan Puluh Tiga. Whole family of 5, gone without a trace. Dinner left on the table, television blaring, car sitting in the driveway. It's a damn legend in Havenwood. Nobody wanted to buy this house, so it's been rotting ever since." The whispering surged again, louder now, like a desperate plea clawing its way out of the dark. Eddie stumbled back, his face drained of color, pale as the dust coating the floor. "I swear, something's in there. We gotta open it." Mac grabbed Eddie's shoulder, gripping it like a vice. "No, Russo." We wait for the cops. If there's something in there, I don't want us to be the ones to find it." But Eddie, with the bullheadedness of a guy who grew up in Cleveland's roughest neighborhoods, ignored him. He yanked the crowbar from the floor and jammed it into the padlock. The metal screeched a bone-chilling wail, like a soul trap for decades, finally unleashed. Sarah yelped, scrambling back, and Mac cursed, lunging to wrestle the crowbar from Eddie's hands. Too late. The lock shattered with a sickening crack, and the freezer door swung open with a slow, groaning creak, like a tomb being pried apart. A blast of frigid air poured out, carrying a sterile, unnatural smell, not decay, not death, but as if time itself had been vacuumed out of the space inside. Eddie's flashlight swept the interior, and all three froze, their breaths catching in their throats like jagged glass. No bodies. No blood. Just 5 pairs of shoes, meticulously arranged in a bizarre circular pattern, like an eye staring back at them with cold accusation. A pair of worn work boots, scuffed and heavy. A pair of simple women's flats, practical and unassuming. A pair of tattered sneakers, laces frayed. A pair of glossy patent leather Mary Janes, delicate and prim. And a pair of kids' sneakers with light-up soles, long dead, their lights extinguished forever. In the center of the circle, like a pupil in that ghastly eye, sat a single VHS tape, its handwritten label stark and commanding, "Watch alone." Sarah clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes brimming with tears that glistened in the dim light. Those shoes, there's kids' shoes. Oh God, this is so wrong. Eddie, his voice shaking, tried to play tough, but his hands betrayed him, trembling as he clenched the crowbar. Who the hell does this? Who lines up shoes like that? And that tape, "Watch alone," what's that supposed to mean? Mac didn't answer. He knelt, staring at the circle of shoes, his hand hovering over the kid's sneakers, trembling, as if afraid to touch them. "This is the Monroes," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "I know it. I grew up here, heard every damn story about them. Arthur, Eleanor, and their 3 kids, Thomas, Clara, and little Samuel. They vanished. And now, this." "Hi." The whispering surged again, louder, more insistent, like dozens of voices muttering at once, their words unintelligible but heavy with despair. Sarah screamed, "I hear it now." She stumbled back, knocking over a cardboard box, its contents old toys, yellowed papers spilling across the dusty floor. "There's something in there, Mac. We gotta get out." Eddie, despite the fear gnawing at his gut, snatched the VHS tape, holding it like a live grenade, his knuckles white. "We need to know what's on this. It might explain everything." Mac shot to his feet, ripping the tape from Eddie's hand with a snarl. "Enough, Russo. The cops handle this. We're not getting mixed up in whatever this is." He stuffed the tape into his jacket pocket, his eyes blazing like a man who'd seen a ghost. "Outside, both of you, now." 30 minutes later, Elm Street was ablaze with the red and blue strobes of police cruisers, their lights cutting through the thick fog that clung to the Monroe house like a shroud. It was as if the heavens themselves were trying to hide the secrets buried within. Captain Miles Corbin, 65, with silver hair and a face weathered by decades of other people's tragedies, stepped out of his police SUV. His gray suit was rumpled, dusted from the 50-mile drive from Cleveland, and his steel-toed boots thudded on the rotting porch boards. Corbin wasn't a superstitious man, but as he crossed the threshold into the house, a heavy dread settled in his chest, like the air was trying to choke him. "What's going on, Mac?" Corbin asked, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority. He'd known Mac since his days as a rookie cop in Havenwood, and he knew the man didn't spook easily. Mac led Corbin up the creaking stairs to the attic, recounting the discovery, his voice faltering when he described the circle of shoes and the tape. "Miles, I don't know what's what, but that freezer, it doesn't belong here. And the way it's locked from the inside? I've never seen anything like it in 30 years on the job." Corbin crouched before the freezer, his knees creaking, his eyes tracing the circle of shoes. He recognized them instantly. The work boots Arthur Monroe's, the steady father who always smelled of sawdust from his carpentry work. The flats Eleanor's, the gentle mother who tended her lilac garden with a quiet devotion. The sneakers Thomas's, the restless 17-year-old itching to leave town, the Mary Jane's Claras, the 14-year-old dreamer with her sketchbook, and the light-up sneakers Samuels, the 8-year-old, with a grin that could light up a room. Corbin's stomach twisted into a knot. In 1993, he was 28, a green officer called to the Monroe house when a neighbor, old Mrs. Henderson, reported the family missing. He could still smell the cold casserole on the kitchen table, hear the television blaring, Full House, see Clara's Walkman lying abandoned, its cassette tape frozen mid-song. No trace, no clues, just a mystery that had haunted him for 32 years, a wound that never healed. "You hear anything, Miles?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling as she huddled behind Mac, her eyes glued to the circle of shoes. Corbin tilted his head, listening hard. No whispers, but he felt an unnatural chill, like the freezer was breathing, exhaling a cold that seeped into his bones. He stood, studying the rune-like carvings on the freezer door. They stirred a memory, a half-forgotten story about an old book in the Havenwood Library, locked in a glass case, guarded by Evelyn Ward, the ancient librarian who never let anyone near it. "Log everything," he ordered a young officer standing nearby, his voice sharp. "Don't touch a damn thing until forensics gets here." Mac handed Corbin the VHS tape, his hand shaking like a leaf in a storm. I think you need to see it, Miles, but something's off about it. I can feel it." Corbin took the tape, his fingers tightening around the worn plastic, the words, "Watch alone," burning into his mind like a brand. It was an invitation, seductive yet menacing, promising answers but threatening horrors. He slipped it into his coat pocket, masking the unease clawing at his gut like a trapped animal. "I'll handle it," he said, his voice firm, though his heart wasn't so sure. "Thanks, folks. Get out of here and let us work." Back at the precinct, Corbin sat alone in the evidence room, a cramped space with gray concrete walls and flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry wasps. The wall clock read 10:30 p.m., the 26th of June, 2025. On the table before him lay the VHS tape, a silent predator waiting to be unleashed. Corbin had seen plenty in his 40 years as a cop: murders, family tragedies, the kind of stuff that hardens you or breaks you. But nothing had ever gripped him with this primal fear, like the tape was staring back at him, daring him to look into its soul. He stood, pacing past shelves of old evidence boxes, unsolved cases from decades past, their labels faded but their stories still raw. The Monroe case had always been his personal demon, the one that kept him up at night, staring at the ceiling while his wife slept beside him. In 1993, he'd torn the house apart, interviewed every neighbor on Elm Street, searched every road within a 5-mile radius of Havenwood. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a drop of blood, not a shred of explanation. Arthur, Eleanor, Thomas, Clara, and Samuel, the whole family vanished, as if the earth had opened up and swallowed them whole. Corbin sat back down, his hand trembling as he held the tape. He knew he had to watch it, but part of him wanted to chuck it out the window, burn it, anything to avoid the truth it held. "Watch alone," he muttered, his voice hoarse, barely louder than the hum of the air conditioner. "Fine, you bastard. I'll watch." He slid the tape into an ancient VCR, its mechanical whine like a warning growl. The television screen flickered with static, then a timestamp blinked into existence, the 14th of April 1993. Corbin's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. That was the day the Monroes were reported missing, the day Havenwood's quiet life cracked open. He took a deep breath, bracing himself for what was coming, his finger hovering over the play button, but before he could press it, the fluorescent lights buzzed and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Only the TV's faint, sickly glow remained, casting long shadows across the concrete walls. A cold shiver ran down Corbin's spine, and the VCR's static grew louder, morphing into a whisper, soft but unmistakable. "Miles, Miles." He flicked the light switch, once, twice, but nothing happened. Standing, he gripped the chair, his eyes locked on the screen, where the static seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. His shadow on the wall didn't match his stance. It was taller, thinner, and moving, though he stood frozen. Corbin's voice broke, as he whispered, "This tape's gonna break me, I know it." Miles Corbin sat frozen in the evidence room, the darkness pressing against him like a living thing. The ancient VCR hummed, its static a venomous hiss, filling the cramped space with an electric tension. The timestamp on the television screen, the 14th of April 1993, burned into his retinas, a date etched into his soul. 32 years ago, that was the day the Monroe family vanished from their Elm Street home in Havenwood, Ohio, leaving behind a cold casserole, a blaring television, and a mystery that had gnawed at Corbin's insides ever since. His hand hovered over the play button, trembling, as the whispered, "Miles, Miles," from moments ago echoed in his mind. The fluorescent lights flickered back on, casting harsh shadows, but his shadow on the wall still felt wrong, too tall, too thin, like it belonged to someone else. "Get a grip, old man," Corbin muttered, his voice hoarse, barely louder than the hum of the air conditioner. He was 65, too old for ghost stories, but the VHS tape labeled "Watch Alone" felt like a curse in his hand. He'd seen plenty in his 40 years as a cop: murders, suicides, the kind of stuff that leaves scars on your soul, but nothing like this. The circle of shoes in the Monroe attic, arranged like a ritual eye, and that bone-chilling freezer locked from the inside had shaken him in a way he couldn't explain. He pressed play, his heart pounding like a jackhammer, bracing for whatever horrors the tape held. The screen crackled, static giving way to a grainy image of the Monroe living room, bathed in the soft glow of a floor lamp. The timestamp read the 14th of April 1993, 6:47 p.m. Corbin recognized the room instantly: the faded floral couch, the oak coffee table, the radio in the corner playing Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You" at low volume. It was like stepping back in time, back to that night when he, a 28-year-old rookie, walked through the house and found it abandoned. But now, the room wasn't empty. Samuel Monroe, the youngest, 8 years old, with a mop of brown curls and a gap-toothed grin, sat cross-legged on the carpet, stacking colorful plastic blocks into a wobbly tower. He was humming, a soft, contented sound, oblivious to the camera watching him like a predator. "Hey, Sammy," a voice said from behind the camera, male, warm, almost paternal, but with a sinister edge that made Corbin's skin crawl. "Want to see a secret clubhouse in the attic?" Samuel's head snapped up, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "A clubhouse? For me?" His voice was high, eager, the kind of innocent trust that twisted Corbin's gut. "Just for you, champ," the voice replied, chuckling, a sound that dripped with calculated charm. "It's the best one ever. Come on, let's check it out." Corbin leaned forward, his breath catching in his throat. He knew that voice, or thought he did, a faint memory tugging at the edges of his mind from the 1993 investigation. The camera followed Samuel as he scrambled to his feet, his block tower toppling unheeded. "Okay," the boy chirped, his small hand reaching out as if toward the person holding the camera, though their hand never appeared in frame. The footage lurched, tracking Samuel as he padded out of the living room, his light-up sneakers flashing faintly with each step. Corbin's chest tightened. Those same sneakers were in the attic, their lights long dead, arranged in that ghastly circle. The camera climbed the stairs to the attic, each wooden step creaking under invisible feet, the sound echoing in the silent evidence room like a death knell. The footage grew shakier, the attic's gloom swallowing the light. Dusty boxes and draped furniture loomed in the shadows, but the camera zeroed in on the freezer, its white bulk stark and menacing, an intruder in the cluttered space. "Wow," Samuel breathed, his voice tinged with awe, his attention caught by something the camera didn't fully show. "What is it?" "It's your special fort, Sammy," the voice said, softer now, almost a whisper, laced with a predatory patience that made Corbin's blood run cold. "Go on, take a look inside. Your adventure starts in there." Samuel hesitated, his small silhouette framed against the freezer's pale door. "Is it dark up there?" he asked, a hint of trepidation creeping into his voice. "A little," the voice replied, smooth as silk. "But I've got a special light, and the surprise will make it all bright." The camera lurched again, as if set down or passed to someone else. Samuel stepped forward, his light-up sneakers flashing one last time before he crossed the threshold into the freezer. Corbin's heart sank, a sickening dread pooling in his gut. He wanted to scream, to reach through the screen and pull the boy back, but he was a helpless voyeur, separated by 3 decades of time. The camera angle shifted wildly, showing a brief, chaotic glimpse of the freezer's dark interior, cold, empty, cavernous. Then came the heavy thud of the door closing, not a slam but a solid, final sound. A metallic click followed the bolt sliding home. Samuel's muffled cry, a single, terrified, "Hey," cut short. The screen went black, drowned in static. Corbin slammed his fist on the table, the crack echoing in the evidence room. His eyes burned, not with tears but with a raw, helpless rage. Samuel's light-up sneakers, one of the 5 pairs in that attic circle, flashed in his mind, a heartbreaking relic of a boy who trusted the wrong person. The voice, that damn voice, was familiar, a ghost from the 1993 investigation, someone who'd been in and out of the Monroe house, someone they'd all overlooked. Corbin's mind raced, sifting through old case files in his memory. Neighbors, friends, relatives. Ray Parker, Eleanor's younger brother, flickered into focus, a quiet handyman, always lingering, always grieving a little too loudly after the disappearance. But it couldn't be that simple, could it? He rewound the tape, his hand shaking, and paused on a frame of the living room. Something caught his eye, a mirror on the far wall, reflecting the room. In it, behind Samuel, was a shadow, a faint outline of a figure that shouldn't have been there. No one else was in the frame, just Samuel and the camera operator. Corbin's pulse quickened. He leaned closer, squinting at the grainy image, but when he played the tape again, the shadow was gone, like it had never existed. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. The memory of 1993 flooded back, vivid and gut-punching. Corbin had been first on the scene, a rookie cop with a chip on his shoulder, eager to prove himself. He'd walked into the Monroe house, the smell of Eleanor's lilac perfume mixing with the stale odor of baked potatoes left in the oven. The kitchen table held Samuel's half-finished dinosaur drawing, a green crayon still clutched in its paper. Clara's Walkman lay abandoned, Whitney Houston's voice faintly audible through the headphones. The television in the living room blared Full House, its laugh track mocking the eerie silence. The family's station wagon sat untouched in the driveway, keys on the counter, bank accounts dormant. It was as if they'd evaporated mid-sentence, mid-life, leaving Corbin with nothing but questions that festered into a lifelong obsession. He cursed himself now, the weight of 32 years pressing down like a stone. "I should have seen it," he growled, his fist clenching. "I should have found them." Back then, he'd interviewed every neighbors, co-workers, even the kids' teachers. Jake Hensley, Thomas's best friend, a scrawny 16-year-old with a crush on Clara, had been one of them. Jake's statement had stuck with Corbin, not because it was useful, but because it was off. The kid claimed he'd seen a black sedan parked near the Monroe house that night, but his story kept shifting. First it was across the street, then down the block. Nobody took him seriously, just a nervous teen grasping at straws. But now, with the tape and the shoes, Corbin wondered if Jake had seen something real, something they'd all dismissed. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through contacts until he found a name, Jake Hensley. Last he'd heard, Jake was still in Havenwood, living out of a trailer 3 miles outside town, a recluse who'd never left the shadow of 1993. Corbin jotted down the address, his gut telling him Jake was a loose thread he needed to pull. The kid, a man pushing 50, might know something, or at least remember something he'd been too scared to say back then. Corbin's eyes drifted back to the VCR, the tape still loaded, its static hissing like a snake. There were more segments to watch, he knew it. The circle of shoes told him that much. 5 pairs, 5 Monroes, each one likely documented in this sickening home movie. But the shadow in the mirror nagged at him, a detail that didn't fit. Was it a trick of the light? A glitch in the tape? Or something worse? Something he didn't dare name? He'd seen the crime scene photos from '93, the untouched house, the eerie normalcy of it all. Now, this tape was a key, but to what kind of lock? A confession? A taunt? Or something darker, tied to those runes on the freezer, the ones that matched the whispers about Evelyn Ward's forbidden book in the library? Evelyn Ward. The name hit him like a punch. The old librarian, pushing 80 now, had been a fixture in Havenwood since Corbin was a kid. She'd always been cagey about that book, a leather-bound relic locked in a glass case in the library's back room. Corbin had never seen it, but the rumors were persistent, told stories about Havenwood's history, about disappearances that stretched back decades, maybe centuries. He made a mental note to visit her, to see if those runes meant anything to her. If anyone knew the town's secrets, it was Evelyn. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. The screen lit up with an unknown number, but the area code was local Havenwood. He answered, his voice gruff. Corbin. Miles, it's Rebecca Klein, a woman's voice said, sharp and urgent, the kind of voice that cut through the fog. Becca Klein, 35, a freelance journalist who'd been poking around the Monroe case for years, trying to turn it into a true crime book or podcast. Corbin had brushed her off before, but she was relentless, always digging, always asking questions he didn't want to answer. What do you want, Becca? He asked, rubbing his temple, the static from the VCR still buzzing in his ears. I heard about the freezer, she said, her words tumbling out fast. The shoes, the tape. I'm at my place, and I just found something you need to see. It's about Jake Hensley. Corbin's grip tightened on the phone. Jake? What about him? I've been going through old interviews, stuff I collected for the book, Becca said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I found Jake's journal from '93, tucked away in a box of donations at the library. He drew something in it, Miles. A sketch of that damn freezer, dated a week before the Monroes disappeared. How the hell did he know about it? Corbin's blood ran cold, his eyes flicking to the VHS tape, still loaded in the VCR, its static hissing like a warning. Jake Hensley, a scared kid back then, had drawn the freezer? Before it was found? Before anyone knew it existed? The room seemed to shrink, the air growing heavier, as if the tape itself was listening. I'm coming over, Corbin said, standing, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. Don't touch that journal until I get there. He hung up, his mind racing. The tape, the shoes, the runes, and now Jake's journal, it was all connected, a web of secrets spun across 3 decades. He grabbed his coat, the tape still in his pocket, its weight like a stone dragging him down. As he stepped toward the door, the VCR hissed louder, the static morphing into a low, guttural sound, almost like a voice. Corbin froze, his hand on the doorknob, and glanced back at the screen. It was still black, but for a split second, he swore he saw a face pale, eyeless, flickering in the static. How the hell did he know? Corbin whispered, his voice lost in the hum of the machine, the question hanging in the air like a noose. Miles Corbin's SUV roared down the dark, fog-choked roads of Havenwood, Ohio, the wipers slapping uselessly against the thick mist that clung to the windshield. It was 11:15 p.m., the 26th of June, 2025, and the 50-mile drive from the precinct to Becca Klein's apartment felt like a descent into a nightmare. The VHS tape, still tucked in his coat pocket, weighed heavy, its watch alone label burning in his mind like a curse. Becca's call about Jake Hensley's journal, a sketch of the freezer dated a week before the Monroes vanished in 1993, had lit a fire under him. Jake, that scrawny kid who'd babbled about a black sedan back then, knew something. Corbin's gut screamed it, and after 40 years as a cop, he trusted his gut more than any evidence log. Havenwood was a ghost of its former self, a small town 30 miles south of Cleveland where half the storefronts on Main Street were boarded up, their faded signs advertising diners and hardware stores that hadn't seen a customer in a decade. The fog only made it worse, turning streetlights into hazy orbs, like eyes watching from the dark. Corbin's radio crackled with static, no music, just a low hum that reminded him of the VCR's hiss back at the precinct. He shook off the thought, focusing on the road, but the image of Samuel Monroe's light-up sneakers in that attic circle haunted him, a gut-punching reminder of the boy's fate on that cursed tape. Becca Klein lived in a run-down apartment complex on the edge of town, A 3-story brick building with flickering neon signs and a parking lot littered with cigarette butts. Corbin parked, his boots crunching gravel as he stepped out, the fog swallowing the sound. He climbed the stairs to apartment 2B, his hand brushing the tape in his pocket, its plastic edges sharp against his fingers. Becca answered the door before he could knock, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. At 35, she was all sharp edges, sharp mind, sharp tongue, sharp ambition driven to crack the Monroe case for her true crime podcast, Havenwood Shadows. Corbin didn't trust journalists, but Becca had a knack for digging up what others missed. "Miles, you look like hell," Becca said, stepping aside to let him in. Her apartment was a mess of papers, coffee cups, and a laptop glowing with research notes. "You saw the tape, didn't you?" Corbin grunted, dropping into a chair that creaked under his 200-pound frame. "Part of it. Enough to know it's bad. Now, what's this about Jake's journal?" Becca slid a worn leather notebook across the table, its pages yellowed and brittle. "Found it in a donation box at the library. Jake must have left it there years ago. Probably didn't think anyone would care. Look at this." She flipped to a page dated the 7th of April, 1993, revealing a pencil sketch of a freezer, its blocky shape unmistakable, down to the rune-like carvings on the door. Below it, in Jake's teenage scrawl, were the words, "Clara saw it, the black door in the attic." Corbin's heart lurched. Clara? Clara? Monroe? How the hell did Jake know about the freezer? It wasn't found until today. Becca leaned forward, her voice low, urgent. "That's what I'm saying, Miles. Jake was Thomas's best friend, hung around the Monroes all the time. He had a crush on Clara, followed her like a puppy. If she saw something weird, he'd know. And this black door, Clara drew it too. It's mentioned later in the journal." Corbin's mind raced, flashing back to 1993. Jake Hensley, 16, all acne and attitude, had been a nervous wreck during his interview, stammering about a black sedan parked near the Monroe house the night they vanished. Corbin had written it off as a kid's imagination running wild, but now, that journal was a bombshell, a clue that could unravel everything. "Where's Jake now?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Out on Route 17, living in a trailer about 3 miles from town," Becca said, pulling up a map on her phone. "He's a recluse, barely talks to anyone. But if he knew about the freezer back then, he's got answers." Corbin stood, pocketing the journal. "I'm going out there. You coming?" Becca hesitated, then grabbed her jacket. "Hell yeah, I'm not letting you hog this story." The trailer park on Route 17 was a sorry sight, a cluster of rusted mobile homes surrounded by overgrown weeds and abandoned cars. Jake's trailer was at the far end, a dented aluminum box with a flickering porch light. Corbin knocked, his fist heavy against the flimsy door, while Becca stood back, her phone recording in case things got messy. The door creaked open, revealing Jake Hensley, now 48, a gaunt man with hollow cheeks and bloodshot eyes. His flannel shirt hung loose on his bony frame, and his hands twitched like he hadn't slept in days. "Miles Corbin?" Jake's voice was a rasp, his eyes darting between Corbin and Becca. "What do you want?" "We need to talk, Jake," Corbin said, stepping closer, his voice low, but firm. "About the Monroes, about this." He held up the journal, open to the freezer sketch. Jake's face went pale, his hands trembling as he backed into the trailer. I don't know nothing about that. That's old stuff, Miles. Let it go." "Bullshit," Corbin snapped, following him inside. The trailer smelled of stale beer and cigarette smoke, cluttered with empty cans and stacks of old newspapers. "You drew this freezer a week before the Monroes disappeared. You knew it was in the attic." "How, Jake? What did you see?" Jake collapsed onto a sagging couch, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I was a kid, okay? 16, scared out of my mind. Clara. She was always drawing weird stuff, talking about dreams. She said she saw a black door in the attic, said it scared her. I thought she was just messing around, but then I saw him, Ray Parker, Eleanor's brother. He was up there one day, messing with something. I didn't know what, but his eyes, they were dead, Miles, like he wasn't even human. Corbin's blood ran cold. Ray Parker. The name had haunted him since the tape, that voice on the VHS warm, coaxing, but laced with malice. Ray, the quiet handyman, always lingering around the Monroe house, fixing pipes, patching walls. Everyone thought he was just a sad uncle, broken by his sister's disappearance. But now, with the tape in Jake's journal, Corbin saw him for what he was, a predator hiding in plain sight. "Why didn't you tell me back then?" Corbin asked, his voice rising, his fist clenching the journal. "You saw Ray in the attic, and you said nothing?" "I was a kid," Jake shouted, his voice cracking. "Nobody listened to me. I told you about the black sedan, and you all laughed it off. I loved Clara, okay? I'd have done anything for her, but she was gone, and I was scared. Ray. He wasn't right, Miles. He'd look at me sometimes, like he knew I'd seen something." Becca stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "What about this black door, Jake?" "Clara's drawing. What did she say about it?" Jake's gaze dropped to the floor, his hand shaking harder. "She said it was in her dreams, a door that opened to nothing but darkness. She drew it over and over, said it was in the attic, behind a wall. I thought she was crazy, but then I saw Ray up there, and, I don't know, man, I just ran." Corbin exchanged a glance with Becca. The freezer, hidden behind that new drywall, was Clara's black door. But how had she known? And why had Jake kept it buried all these years? "You're coming with us," Corbin said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We're going to the library. Evelyn Ward's got some explaining to do." The Havenwood Public Library was a crumbling relic, a two-story brick building with cracked windows and a sign that hadn't been updated since the Clinton era. It was after midnight, but Evelyn Ward, the 80-year-old librarian, was still there, hunched over a desk piled with books, her silver hair glowing under a dim lamp. Evelyn had been a fixture in Havenwood since Corbin was a kid, her sharp eyes and sharper tongue legendary. She guarded the library's secrets like a dragon, especially that old book in the glass case, the one nobody was allowed to touch. "Evelyn," Corbin said, stepping into the library with Becca and Jake trailing behind, "we need to talk." Evelyn looked up, her eyes narrowing as she took in the trio. Miles Corbin, dragging trouble in here at this hour? And with Rebecca Klein, no less. What's this about? Becca didn't waste time, tossing Jake's journal onto the desk. This. Jake drew a freezer in 1993, before the Monroes disappeared. It's the same one we found today, with runes on it. Runes that look a hell of a lot like the ones in that book you keep locked up. Evelyn's face tightened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "You've been digging where you shouldn't, girl," she said, her voice low, almost a growl. "That book's nothing but old stories, town history. It's not for you." "Cut the crap, Evelyn," Corbin snapped, leaning over the desk. "The Monroes are dead, and we found a freezer in their attic with their shoes arranged like some damn ritual. The tape, the rune sits all connected. You know something about this town, about what happened to them. Spill it." Evelyn's eyes flickered to Jake, who shrank under her gaze. "Jacob Hensley," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You were always sniffing around the Monroes, weren't you? What did you see?" Jake swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. "I saw Ray Parker in the attic, and Clara. She drew a black door, said it was in her dreams. I didn't know what it meant, I swear." Evelyn stood, her frail frame moving with surprising speed as she shuffled to the back room. She unlocked the glass case, pulling out a leather-bound book, its cover cracked and faded, the pages smelling of mildew and time. "This book," she said, her voice trembling, "tells the history of Havenwood. Every 30 years, something takes people, families. 1,963, 1,933, 1,893. Always the same, gone without a trace, shoes left behind." "The runes you saw? They're older than this town, older than you can imagine." Corbin's heart pounded, his mind racing. "You're saying the Monroes weren't the first? And you knew?" "I didn't know," Evelyn snapped, her eyes flashing. "I suspected." But nobody listens to an old woman. I warned Eleanor once, told her to leave town, but she laughed it off. Said Havenwood was her home. Her voice broke, and for a moment, Corbin saw something human in her grief, maybe guilt. Becca flipped through the book, stopping at a page with a sketch of the same runes from the freezer. "This is it," she said, her voice urgent. "These symbols, they're a mark, aren't they? Some kind of ritual?" Evelyn didn't answer, her eyes distant. Corbin grabbed the book, scanning the page. The text was in English, but cryptic, mentioning a dead Havenwood ode, a cycle of disappearances tied to an old church on the edge of town. "The abandoned church on Pine Road," Corbin said, his voice tight. "That's where we're going next." The church was a decaying husk, its steeple sagging, its stained glass windows shattered. Corbin, Becca, and Jake arrived just before 1 a.m., their flashlights cutting through the fog like knives. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of rot and something sharper, like ozone before a storm. Corbin kicked open the rusted door, the screech echoing in the empty sanctuary. Pews were overturned, hymnals scattered like dead leaves. Becca pointed her flashlight at the altar, where a trapdoor lay hidden beneath a rotted rug. "Clara's black door," Jake whispered, his voice shaking. "She said it was here, in her dreams." Corbin pried open the trapdoor, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. The air that rose from below was cold, damp, carrying a faint metallic tang. They descended, their footsteps echoing, the walls slick with moss. At the bottom was a small chamber, its floor littered with objects, rings, watches, a child's locket, all from different eras. In the center, pinned to the wall, was a drawing in Clara's unmistakable style. A black door, hands reaching out from it, clawing at the edges. Becca gasped, stumbling back, her hand brushing the drawing. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed, her flashlight clattering to the stone floor. "Becca!" Corbin shouted, kneeling beside her. She was out cold, her breathing shallow. Jake froze, his face pale as death. When Becca came to, her eyes were wild, her voice trembling. "I saw her, Miles. Eleanor. She was standing by a well, pointing at it," she said. "He wasn't alone." Corbin's blood ran cold. The well Mrs. Henderson had mentioned it in '93, said Ray Parker had been digging around it before the disappearance. He dismissed it as routine handyman work, but now it felt like a neon sign. "We need to check that well," he said, helping Becca to her feet. "Tomorrow, first light." Back at her apartment, Becca sat on her couch, clutching a mug of coffee, her hands still shaking. Corbin stood by the window, staring into the fog, the VHS tape burning a hole in his pocket. Jake had bolted, mumbling about needing air, but Corbin didn't trust him to stay quiet. The church, the book, the well, it was all coming together, but the pieces didn't fit yet. Ray Parker was the key, but Eleanor's words and Becca's vision, he wasn't alone, nagged at him. Who else was involved? And why? Becca's phone buzzed, an unknown number flashing on the screen. She answered, putting it on speaker. A voice, low and distorted, crackled through. "You're digging too deep, girl. The tape isn't the end." Corbin grabbed the phone. "Who is this? What do you know about the Monroes?" The line went dead, but not before a burst of static, identical to the VHS tape's hiss, filled the room. Becca's eyes widened, her voice barely a whisper. "That was him, wasn't it, Ray?" Corbin didn't answer, his mind racing. He traced the call on his own phone, the number leading to a payphone near the old forest on Pine Road, a quarter-mile from the church. He grabbed his keys, the tape still in his pocket, its weight heavier than ever. "Stay here," he told Becca, his voice sharp. "Lock the door." He drove to the payphone, the fog thicker now, swallowing his headlights. The booth stood alone, its glass cracked, the receiver dangling like a noose. He stepped out, his flashlight cutting through the mist, and froze. On the ground, etched in the dirt, was a single rune, identical to those on the freezer. The static hum filled his ears again, not from the phone but from the air itself, like the forest was whispering. Corbin's heart pounded, his hand gripping the tape, as he realized this wasn't just about the Monroes anymore. Something bigger, something older, was waking up in Havenwood. Miles Corbin sat hunched in the evidence room, the air thick with the hum of the ancient VCR, and the weight of 32 years of guilt. It was 1:45 a.m., the 27th of June, 2025, and the flickering fluorescent lights cast jagged shadows across the concrete walls of the Havenwood precinct. The VHS tape, labeled Watch Alone, sat loaded in the machine, its static hiss a venomous whisper that seemed to mock him. The first segment had been a gut-punch little Samuel Monroe, 8 years old, lured into that attic freezer with a promise of a secret clubhouse, his light-up sneakers flashing one last time before the door slammed shut. Corbin's knuckles were white, gripping the edge of the table, his heart pounding like a drum as he braced for the next segment. He knew what was coming: Clara and Thomas, 2 more pairs of shoes from that sinister circle in the attic, 2 more lives snuffed out. But the question gnawing at him was, who was behind that voice? Ray Parker, Eleanor's brother, was the obvious answer, but the shadow in the mirror from the first video and Becca Klein's vision. He wasn't alone suggested, something darker, something bigger. Corbin pressed play, his breath catching as the screen crackled to life. The timestamp read the 14th of April 1993, 7:12 p.m., just minutes after Samuel's segment. The grainy image showed the Monroe kitchen, a cozy space with yellow wallpaper and a Formica table cluttered with dishes. Clara Monroe, 14, sat hunched over her sketchbook, her dark hair falling across her face, a Walkman clipped to her jeans, headphones blasting what sounded like Nirvana's "Come As You Are." Her pencil scratched furiously, sketching something Corbin couldn't see. The radio in the corner played Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You" at low volume, a haunting echo of the normalcy that was about to be shattered. "Clara, honey," the voice from behind the camera said, that same chilling mix of warmth and menace that had lured Samuel. It was Ray Parker. Corbin was sure now, the cadence matching the handyman's quiet drawl from 1,993 interviews. But there was a tightness to it, a predatory patience that made Corbin's skin crawl. Sammy's hiding up in the attic. He needs his big sister. Clara looked up, her brow furrowing, annoyance flashing in her eyes as she pulled off her headphones. "Mom said no playing up there," she said, her voice sharp, a teenager's defiance cutting through. "It's dusty as hell, and I'm not cleaning up his messes." The voice chuckled, a sound that dripped with manipulation. "He's waiting for you, honey. Don't let him down. It's a special game he's got up there, just for the 2 of you. See?" Corbin leaned forward, his heart sinking. Clara was smarter than Samuel, more cautious, but the voice knew exactly how to pull her strings, playing on her love for her little brother. She sighed, slamming her sketchbook shut, revealing a glimpse of her drawing, a dark, jagged shape that looked like a door with hands reaching out. Corbin's breath hitched. It was the same image Jake Hensley had mentioned, the black door Clara had seen in her dreams. "Okay, fine," Clara muttered, standing, her chair scraping loudly against the linoleum floor. "But if I get covered in dust, I'm blaming you guys," she called out. "Sammy, you up there?" as she headed for the hallway, her sneakers scuffing the floor. The camera followed, a silent, stalking eye, its lens steady despite the shaking hands Corbin imagined holding it. The footage climbed the attic stairs, Clara's steps slower, more hesitant than Samuel's. "Sammy, this isn't funny," she said, her voice sharper now, laced with a teenage skepticism that warred with her worry. No reply came, only the echo of her own voice in the stairwell. Corbin could feel her unease, a knot tightening in his own gut as he watched, powerless, across 3 decades. "He's probably just trying to surprise you," the voice said, its silken tone laced with a cruel edge. "You know how he is." The attic came into view, its gloom swallowing the light, the freezer a white monolith dominating the space. Clara stopped, her silhouette framed against its pale door. "Samuel, come on," she called, her voice trembling now, a crack of fear breaking through. She reached out, her fingers brushing the cold metal handle. "Sammy?" Corbin's muscles tensed, his nails digging into his palms. He wanted her to run, to scream, to fight, but the invisible bond of family was a chain. She pulled the door open a few inches, the hinges groaning. The interior was dark, a yawning void. "Samuel," she shouted, her voice breaking. Then, a sudden movement too fast to track. A shadow lunged from within, or maybe from behind the camera. It was impossible to tell. Clara gasped, a choked, blood-curdling scream, and the camera tilted wildly, catching a flash of her terrified face, before dropping to the floor, showing only dusty floorboards. A muffled struggle, a sharp cry cut short, and the heavy thud of the freezer door slamming shut. The metallic click of the bolt rang out, final and merciless. The screen went black, static hissing like a venomous snake. Corbin slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing in the empty room. "Damn it," he growled, his voice raw. Clara's Mary Janes, those glossy shoes in the attic circle, burned in his mind, a testament to her stolen life. The Voice Ray's voice had played her like a puppet, using her love for Samuel to lure her to her doom. The cruelty was staggering, a calculated sadism that twisted Corbin's stomach into knots. He rewound the tape, pausing on Clara's sketchbook. The black door, those clawing hands, it was the same image from the church basement, the one that had made Becca collapse. Corbin's mind raced. Clara had seen something, known something, before she died. Had she sensed the danger? Dreamed it? He needed to talk to Jake again, to press him on what Clara had told him. But the tape wasn't done. Corbin pressed play, the timestamp now the 14th of April 1993, 7:28 p.m. The screen flickered to the Monroe hallway, dimly lit, the shadows long and distorted. Thomas Monroe, 17, tall and broad-shouldered, paced like a caged animal, his face etched with worry. His sneakers, those scuffed ones from the attic, circle squeaked on the hardwood floor. Corbin remembered Thomas as the restless one, always itching to leave Havenwood, a kid with big dreams and a protective streak for his younger siblings. "Thomas," the voice said, its warmth gone, replaced by a chilling, conspiratorial tone. "You seen Samuel or Clara?" Thomas stopped, turning toward the camera, his eyes narrowing. "No, that's what I'm wondering. Mom said they were playing, but it's too damn quiet." His voice was deep, laced with a nascent authority, the eldest sibling sensing something wrong in the house's rhythm. "They're up in the attic," the voice said, casual but dripping with intent. "Talking about some secret game earlier. You know how they get when they're plotting." Corbin watched Thomas's face, the suspicion clear in his tightened jaw. The attic wasn't a usual hangout, and the silence was unnerving him. "The attic?" Thomas said, his voice sharp. "Why the hell would they be up there for so long? Mom's gonna flip if they're making a mess. Maybe you should check on them," the voice pressed, playing on his protective instincts. "Make sure they're not getting into trouble. You know, before your mom finds out." Thomas ran a hand through his disheveled hair, hesitating. Corbin could see the debate in his eyes. Blow it off or go check, the latter one. "Yeah, all right," he sighed, resignation in his tone. "But if they've trashed the place, I ain't cleaning it up." He strode toward the attic stairs, calling out, "Sam, Clara, you guys up there? Dinner's almost ready." His voice echoed, unanswered, swallowed by the house's oppressive silence. The camera followed, its lens steady, a silent hunter trailing its prey. As Thomas climbed, his steps were purposeful, not naive like Samuel's, or hesitant like Clara's. Corbin's dread deepened. Thomas was no kid to be easily tricked. He was strong, likely to fight back. The confrontation would be brutal. The attic materialized, the freezer's white bulk dominating the gloom. Thomas scanned the space, his eyes narrowing at the anomaly. "What in the world is that?" he muttered, gesturing toward the freezer. "And where are they?" "They're inside, Tom," the voice said, closer now, the friendly veneer stripped away, replaced by a chilling flatness. "They found a new hiding spot." Thomas spun toward the camera, his body tensing. "Inside that?" His voice was incredulous, fear creeping in. "What are you talking about? Open this thing." He strode toward the freezer, his earlier unease exploding into alarm. He grabbed the handle, yanking hard, but it didn't budge. Bolted. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted, panic threading his words. He turned, facing the camera's operator. "Where are my brother and sister? What have you done?" "They're fine, Thomas," the voice said, calm and cold. "They're just waiting for the rest of the family to join the game." "This isn't a game," Thomas roared, his fear giving way to fury. He lunged, not at the freezer but toward the camera, toward the unseen tormentor. The screen dissolved into chaos grunts, a desperate cry from Thomas, "Get away from me." A sickening thud, like a body hitting wood. Corbin flinched, his heart racing. The camera clattered to the floor, its lens skewed, capturing only dusty floorboards and the freezer's base. Muffled sounds of a struggle filled the audio-heavy breathing, a pained groan, the scrape of shoes. Then, a final, choked gasp from Thomas, followed by silence, broken only by the killer's ragged breathing. After an agonizing pause, a hand reached into the frame, fumbling for the camera. It righted itself, shaky, then focused on the freezer door, now slightly ajar. The interior was dark, unrevealing. The killer's breathing steadied, and the familiar sequence played out, the door pulled shut, the bolt sliding home with a decisive clang. The screen went black, static hissing like a swarm of angry insects. Corbin sat back, his hands shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. Thomas's sneakers, Clara's Mary Janice, whom more pairs accounted for. The methodical cruelty was beyond comprehension, each victim drawn into the trap by their love for one another, exploited by a monster who knew their every weakness. Ray Parker's voice was unmistakable now, but the shadow in Samuel's video, the extra footsteps Corbin swore he heard in Thomas's segment, someone else was there. An accomplice? The thought was a shard of ice in his veins. He rewound the tape, pausing on Thomas's segment, straining to catch the sound again. There it was, a faint scuff, like a second pair of boots on the attic floor, just before Thomas lunged. Corbin's mind flashed to Becca's vision. He wasn't alone. He needed to see the rest of the tape, to know what happened to Eleanor and Arthur, but a new fear gripped him. What if there was more? What if the tape held secrets beyond the Monroes? His fingers hovered over the VCR controls when he noticed something, a faint scratch at the end of the tape's label, partially hidden by the "Watch Alone" scrawl. He tilted it under the light, squinting. It was a number. 6. 6 segments. But only 5 Monroes. His heart lurched. 5 pairs of shoes, 5 victims. So what was the 6th video? A confession, a taunt, or something worse? Corbin pressed play, the timestamp unchanged. The 14th of April, 1993, 10:22 p.m. But this wasn't the Monroe house. The screen showed a dark forest, the camera shaky, capturing gnarled trees and a dirt clearing. Ray Parker's face appeared, illuminated by a flashlight, his eyes hollow, his smile twisted. He stood over a freshly dug pit, a shovel in hand, muttering, "The sacrifice must be complete." Corbin's blood ran cold as a figure in a black cloak stepped into frame, their face obscured, a glint of metal on their hand or ring, maybe. The screen flickered, static swallowing the image, but not before Ray's voice whispered, "Havenwood's debt is paid." Corbin shouted, "Who the hell is that?" His voice echoing in the empty room, the static roaring back like a mocking laugh. The fog hung heavy over Havenwood, Ohio, as dawn broke on the 27th of June, 2025, casting a gray pallor over the Monroe property on Elm Street. Captain Miles Corbin stood at the edge of the backyard, his boots sinking into the damp grass, his breath visible in the chilly morning air. The old well, a relic from the farmstead that once stood here, was barely visible, its wooden cover overgrown with ivy and weeds, hidden like a guilty secret. At 65, Corbin's joints ached, but the fire in his gut burned hotter than ever. The VHS tapes images of Samuel, Clara, and Thomas being lured to their deaths by Ray Parker had seared itself into his mind, each frame a fresh wound. The 6th video, showing Ray in the forest with a cloaked figure, muttering about a sacrifice, had turned his blood to ice. Becca Klein's vision, he wasn't alone, and the mysterious phone call last night, warning her to stop digging, pointed to something bigger, something sinister festering in Havenwood's roots. The well was their last hope. Corbin had dismissed it in 1993, when old Mrs. Henderson mentioned Ray Parker tinkering with it, chalking it up to routine handyman work. Now, with Jake Hensley's journal sketching the freezer, and Clara's black door, the well was a neon sign screaming for attention. A specialized forensics team, led by a wiry tech named Lopez, had arrived with a winch and a camera rig, their equipment scattered across the half-acre backyard. Becca stood nearby, her dark hair tucked under a baseball cap, her smartphone recording every move for her podcast, Havenwood Shadows. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she hadn't slept since her collapse in the church basement, where Clara's drawing of the black door had triggered that haunting vision of Eleanor pointing to this very well. "You sure about this, Miles?" Becca asked, her voice low, almost swallowed by the hum of the winch. "If they're down there, God, I don't know if I'm ready to see it." Corbin didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the well's rotting cover as Lopez's team pried it open. "Nobody's ready for this," he muttered, his voice gravelly, worn thin by decades of carrying other people's tragedies. "But we owe them answers. Arthur, Eleanor, the kids they've been waiting 32 years. Lopez, a no-nonsense guy with a buzz cut and a clipboard, shouted, "We're ready, Captain." The team lowered a high-def camera into the well, its cable snaking down the 30-foot shaft. The air that rose from the opening was cold, damp, carrying a faint earthy stench that made Corbin's stomach churn. He crowded around the monitor with Becca, watching as the camera's light pierced the darkness, revealing slick stone walls and a glint of water at the bottom. The screen flickered, then resolved into a heart-stopping sight. Bones, scattered and tangled, lay in a jumbled heap, some small, some larger, mingled with tattered scraps of fabric. A collective gasp rose from the team. Corbin's knees buckled, and he gripped the monitor's edge, his knuckles white. "Jesus," he whispered, his voice breaking. "It's them." Becca covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. 5 skeletons. "Oh God, little Sammy's down there." Lopez's voice was steady, but his hands trembled as he adjusted the camera. "Looks like multiple remains, Captain. We'll need to bring in anthropologists to confirm, but, yeah, it's a family." Corbin's mind flashed to the circle of shoes in the attic, Arthur's work boots, Eleanor's flats, Thomas's sneakers, Clara's Mary Jane's, Samuel's light-up trainers. The well was their tomb, hidden in plain sight, just yards from the home where they'd laughed and lived. Ray Parker had buried them here, right under everyone's noses, while he played the grieving uncle, helping with searches, shedding crocodile tears. The thought was a knife in Corbin's gut, twisting deeper with every second. "Get them out," Corbin ordered, his voice hoarse but firm. "Careful, Lopez, they deserve that much." The recovery was slow, meticulous, a grim ballet of winches and harnesses. Forensic anthropologists arrived, their faces masked but their movements precise, pulling up bones wrapped in plastic sheets. Each fragment was a piece of the Monroe's Arthur's sturdy frame, Eleanor's delicate hands, Thomas's lanky limbs, Clara's small shoulders, Samuel's tiny, heartbreaking form. But then, Lopez's team found something else. A small metal box, rusted but intact, buried among the bones. Corbin's heart lurched as Lopez pried it open, revealing a folded piece of paper, its ink faded but legible. "They're not the only ones." "What the hell does that mean?" Becca whispered, her voice trembling as she leaned over Corbin's shoulder to read. Corbin didn't answer, his eyes locked on the paper. The words were a taunt, a promise of more horrors. Inside the box was something else, a silver ring, etched with the same rune-like symbols from the freezer. It didn't belong to the Monroes. Corbin had cataloged their belongings in '93, and this wasn't theirs. He bagged it, his hand shaking, the weight of the discovery pressing down like a stone. "Captain," Lopez called, holding up a sealed evidence bag. "We found this with the remains. Looks like a woman's ring, but it's not Eleanor's. Wrong size, wrong style." Corbin's mind raced back to the 6th video. Ray Parker in the forest, the cloaked figure with a glint of metal on their hand. An accomplice. The ring was proof, a tangible link to someone else, someone who'd helped Ray orchestrate this nightmare. But who? And Why? Becca's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She glanced at it, her face paling. It's a text from the library, she said, her voice barely audible. Evelyn Ward wants to meet, says she found something in the book. The Havenwood Library was a tomb at 8 a.m., its shelves heavy with dust and secrets. Evelyn Ward sat at her desk, her silver hair glowing under a flickering lamp, the leather-bound book open before her. Corbin and Becca entered, the ring and the note from the well burning in Corbin's pocket. Evelyn's eyes were sharp, but there was a tremble in her hands, a crack in her usual iron facade. You found them, didn't you? Evelyn said, her voice low, almost accusatory. The Monroes. In the well. Hearns. Corbin nodded, his jaw tight. 5 skeletons, and this. He slid the note across the desk, the words, they're not the only ones stark in the dim light. What do you know, Evelyn? That book of yours, those runes, the disappearances, talk. Evelyn's eyes flickered to the book, then back to Corbin. I told you, it's Havenwood's history. Every 30 years, families vanish. 1,963, a family of 4, gone from their farm. 1,933, a preacher and his kids, no trace. 1,893, settlers, wiped out. Always the same shoes left behind, runes marking the spot. The book calls it a debt, something this town owes. Becca's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. A debt to what? Or who? Ray Parker did this, didn't he? But he wasn't alone. Who helped him? Evelyn hesitated, her fingers tracing the book's pages. Ray came to me once, before it happened. Said he was hearing voices, telling him to complete the cycle. I thought he was crazy, grieving his sister's marriage to Arthur. But there was someone else, someone he met at the old church. A man in a cloak, he said. I didn't believe him then. Corbin's heart pounded, the memory of the 6th video flashing in his mind, Ray and the cloaked figure, the ring glinting. You knew Ray was unhinged, and you said nothing? He growled, leaning over the desk. People died, Evelyn. Kids died. I didn't know, Evelyn snapped, her voice cracking. I told Eleanor to leave, to take her family and go. She wouldn't listen. She loved this town, loved her damn lilacs. Her eyes glistened, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. I found something else this morning, a letter, tucked in the book. She slid a yellowed envelope across the desk, addressed to Father Daniel Moore, Havenwood Church. Corbin tore it open, his hands shaking. The letter was dated the 10th of April, 1993, 4 days before the Monroes vanished. In Ray's scrawled handwriting, it read, Father, I've seen the truth. The family must pay the debt. Eleanor broke the covenant by marrying him. The voices say it's time. Forgive me. Corbin's blood ran cold. A covenant? Voices? Ray wasn't just a jealous brother, he was driven by something deeper, something deranged, maybe even supernatural. Father Moore, Becca said, her voice trembling. He was the priest at the church in 93, right? He baptized Samuel. Corbin nodded, his mind racing. Moore had been cooperative during the investigation, a quiet man who'd organized prayer vigils for the Monroes. Had he known about Ray's madness? Had he hidden it? We need to search the church again, Corbin said, pocketing the letter. If Moore knew something, there might be more. The abandoned church on Pine Road was a skeletal ruin, its steeple leaning like a broken finger against the gray sky. Corbin and Becca returned at noon, the fog thinner but still oppressive, the air heavy with the scent of decay. They descended into the basement again, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The chamber was as they'd left earrings, watches, a child's locket from past disappearances, and Clara's drawing of the black door, its clawing hands a silent scream. Corbin's eyes scanned the walls, searching for anything they'd missed. Becca knelt, her fingers brushing the stone floor. Miles, look, she said, pointing to a loose slab. They pried it up, revealing a small cache of Papers Church records, faded but legible. One was a baptismal certificate for Samuel Monroe, signed by Father Moore. Another was a photograph, grainy and old, showing Ray Parker standing outside the church with a man in a dark coat, his face blurred but a ring visible on his hand, matching the one from the well. "Son of a bitch," Corbin muttered, holding the photo to the light. Ray had help. This guy, whoever he is, was part of it. Becca's phone buzzed again, another unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker. The same distorted voice from last night crackled through. "You're digging too deep, girl. The tape isn't the end." Corbin snatched the phone. "Who are you? What do you know about Ray Parker?" The voice laughed, a low, guttural sound that made Corbin's skin crawl. "Havenwood belongs to us." The line went dead, static hissing like the VHS tape's venomous whisper. Becca's face was pale, her hands trembling. Miles, that was the same static, like the tape. Corbin's mind raced, the pieces falling into place but not fitting right. The ring, the letter, the cloaked figure. Ray wasn't alone. And the note from the well, they're not the only ones, suggested more victims, more secrets buried in Havenwood soil. He drove back to Becca's apartment, the photo and letter in his pocket, determined to watch the rest of the tape. But when they arrived, a package sat on her doorstep, unmarked, its weight heavy in Corbin's hands as he picked it up. Inside was a second VHS tape, its label identical to the first, scrawled in the same handwriting. "Keep watching alone." Corbin's heart stopped as he handed it to Becca, who backed away, her eyes wide with fear. "What is this, Miles?" she whispered, her voice shaking. He didn't answer, his fingers tightening around the tape. They stepped into her apartment, the air thick with dread. Corbin loaded the tape into her old VCR, the machine groaning to life. The screen flickered, revealing a dark room, not the Monroe house, but somewhere else. Stone walls, flickering candles, and another circle of shoes, newer, unfamiliar. A voice, not Ray's, but chillingly similar, whispered, "Havenwood belongs to us." The screen went black, and a loud knock echoed from Becca's door, sharp and insistent, like a heartbeat in the silence. The Havenwood Cemetery sat on a hill, overlooking the rolling Ohio countryside, its gravestone stark against a sky the color of bruised plums. It was the 30th of June, 2025, 3 days after the grim discovery in the well, and the town had gathered to lay the Monroe family to rest. 5 caskets, polished oak gleaming under the gray light, stood side by side in a row: Arthur, Eleanor, Thomas, Clara, and little Samuel. Captain Miles Corbin, 65, stood at the back of the crowd, his gray suit rumpled, his silver hair catching the breeze. His boots, still dusted with dirt from the Monroe property, felt heavy, like the weight of 32 years of failure pressing him into the earth. The VHS tape zone showing the family's final moments, the other a cryptic glimpse of a new circle of shoes burned in his mind, their secrets only half revealed. Ray Parker, Eleanor's brother, was the killer, but the cloaked figure, the ring, the note. They're not the only ones, and the chilling phone calls pointed to a conspiracy that stretched beyond one man's madness. The preacher's voice droned, a somber hum lost in the rustle of leaves and the quiet sobs of the crowd. Corbin's eyes scanned the face-old neighbors, curious locals, even a few reporters sniffing for a story. Becca Klein stood near the front, her dark hair tucked under a black cap, her smartphone discreetly recording for her podcast, Havenwood Shadows. She'd been relentless since the well, digging through archives, chasing leads, but her face was pale, haunted by the second tape's cryptic message, "Havenwood belongs to us." Jake Hensley was absent, holed up in his trailer 3 miles out on Route 17, too shaken to face the town after spilling his secrets about Ray and the black-cloaked figure. Corbin's hand drifted to his pocket, where the second tape sat, its weight a constant reminder of the unanswered questions. The first tape had shown Ray luring the Monroes to their deaths, each one trapped in that attic freezer by their love for one another. The second tape, found on Becca's doorstep, was Differenta's stone-walled room, a new circle of shoes, and that voice, not Ray's but eerily similar, hinting at a larger, older evil. Evelyn Ward's book, with its tales of disappearances every 30 years, 1963, 1933, 1893, had cracked open a nightmare Corbin couldn't shake. Havenwood wasn't just a sleepy town. It was a graveyard, hiding a debt paid in blood. The preacher finished, and the crowd began to disperse, leaving flowers on the casket's lilacs for Eleanor, a nod to her garden. A young woman, maybe a distant cousin, approached Corbin, her eyes red-rimmed but steady. "Captain Corbin, thank you," she said, her voice soft, "for finding them, for giving them peace." Corbin nodded, his throat tight, unable to find words. Peace? He'd given them graves, not justice. Ray Parker was still a ghost, vanished 6 months after the Monroes in '93, his trail cold as the well where he'd buried them. And the accomplice, the cloaked figure, the ring, the voice on the phone was out there, maybe watching from the crowd. "I did my job," he muttered, turning away, the weight of her gratitude heavier than he could bear. Becca caught up with him as he walked to his SUV, her steps quick, her voice urgent. "Miles, we need to talk about that second tape. It's not just about the Monroes. Those shoes, they weren't theirs. And that voice, it's someone else." "I know," Corbin said, his voice gravelly, worn thin by sleepless nights. "But we've got nothing solid. No prints, no leads, just a damn tape and a ring that doesn't match anyone we know." Becca grabbed his arm, her eyes fierce. "You gave them peace, Miles. That's more than most get, but this isn't over. You saw the book disappearances every 30 years. 1,963, a family of 4, 1,933, a preacher's kids. It's a pattern, and we're not done digging." Corbin's jaw tightened, his hand brushing the tape in his pocket. "Peace? I gave them graves. Ray's still out there, or someone is. And that ring, it's our only shot at finding the bastard who helped him." They drove to Jake Hensley's trailer, the fog lifting but the air still heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth. Corbin needed answers, and Jake was the last loose thread. The trailer park on Route 17 was a desolate sprawl, rusted mobile homes surrounded by weeds and broken dreams. Jake's trailer was at the far end, its porch light flickering like a dying star. Corbin banged on the door, his fist heavy, while Becca stood back, her phone ready to record. Jake opened the door, his gaunt face paler than before, his bloodshot eyes darting nervously. "Miles, what now?" he rasped, his flannel shirt hanging loose on his 150-pound frame. "I told you everything." "Not everything," Corbin said, stepping inside, the trailer's stale beer and cigarette stench hitting him like a wall. He tossed Jake's journal onto the cluttered table, open to the sketch of the freezer. "You saw Ray in the attic. You saw Clara's drawings. And you saw someone else, didn't you? That night, the black sedan, who was in it?" Jake collapsed onto the sagging couch, his hands trembling. "I was 16, man. Scared out of my mind. I loved Clara, okay? I'd sneak over to their house, just to see her. That night, I saw Ray outside, talking to someone in a dark coat, near the church. I couldn't see his face, but he had a ring, shiny, like the one you found. I ran, Miles. I didn't want to know what they were doing. And for you." Corbin's heart pounded, the photo from the church basement flashing in his mind. Ray, and the man in the dark coat, the ring glinting. "Why didn't you tell me?" he growled, leaning over Jake, his voice sharp. "Kids died, Jake. You could have stopped it." "I was a kid," Jake shouted, his voice cracking, tears welling in his eyes. "Nobody believed me about the sedan. I thought it was nothing, just Ray being weird. But after they were gone, I kept seeing that guy in my dreams, black coat, no face, just that damn ring." Becca stepped forward, her voice steady but urgent. "Where, Jake? Where did you see them?" Jake's eyes flicked to the window, toward the forest beyond the trailer park. "Pine Road, near the church. There's a clearing, maybe a quarter-mile in. Ray was digging there, him and that guy. I never went back." Corbin exchanged a glance with Becca. The forest. The sixth video, Ray digging in a clearing, muttering about a sacrifice. "You're taking us there," Corbin said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Now." The forest off Pine Road was a tangle of gnarled trees and underbrush, the air thick with the smell of pine and decay. Corbin, Becca, and Jake trekked through the fog, their flashlights cutting narrow beams through the darkness. It was 3 p.m., but the forest felt like midnight, the canopy blocking out the sun. Jake led them to a clearing, his steps faltering, his breath ragged. "This is it," he whispered, pointing to a patch of disturbed earth, now overgrown but still bearing the faint outline of a pit. Corbin knelt, his flashlight sweeping the ground. His heart lurched as he spotted a glint of metal half buried in the dirt. He dug with his hands, pulling up another silver ring, identical to the one from the well, etched with the same runes. "Son of a bitch," he muttered, holding it up. "It's the same." Becca's eyes widened, her voice trembling. "That's the accomplices. Ray didn't do this alone." Corbin stood, the ring heavy in his hand, his mind racing. The letter from Father Moore, Ray's confession about a covenant, the book's tales of cyclical disappearances, it all pointed to a cult, a hidden group in Havenwood orchestrating these horrors for decades, maybe centuries. Ray was a pawn, driven by madness or voices, but someone else was pulling the strings. They returned to Becca's apartment, the second tape waiting like a coiled snake. Corbin loaded it into the VCR, the machine groaning as the screen flickered to life. The timestamp was blank, the setting unfamiliar, a stone-walled room, lit by flickering candles. A new circle of shoes, none matching the Monroes, sat in the center, arranged in the same eerie eye pattern. Figures in black cloaks stood around it, their faces hidden, chanting softly in a language Corbin couldn't place. The same voice from the phone call rasped, "Every 30 years, Havenwood pays its debt." The camera zoomed in on the shoes, then cut to static. Becca gasped, her hand clutching Corbin's arm. "Miles, those shoes, they're new. This isn't old, this is now." Corbin's heart pounded, the realization hitting like a sledgehammer. The cult was still active, still killing, and Havenwood was next. He stood, ready to call for backup, when Becca's phone buzzed. An email, no sender, just an attachment, a photo of a new circle of shoes, taken outside the abandoned church, timestamped an hour ago. Becca's voice trembled as she read the subject line. "It's starting again." A loud knock echoed from the door, sharp and insistent, like a heartbeat in the silence. Corbin drew his gun, his eyes locked on the door, the tape static hissing behind him. "Stay back," he whispered to Becca, stepping forward, his heart racing. The knock came again, louder, and the static surged, a voice whispering through it, not from the tape but from the air itself. "Havenwood belongs to us."